Insidious 6 or Insidious Out of the Further is just out in theaters this past weekend. I had the fortunate pleasure of seeing this in theaters on Saturday night, and I'm here to tell you right now, this movie is ass. I thought this was a very like mildly bad movie. As a somewhat new horror fan, I went and saw Obsession. If you watch my Obsession review, wow, Obsession was crazy. Let me watch more horror movies. Not Insidious 6, man. I thought this movie was really not that impressive to me and how it played out. And I think for a recommendation point of view, only Insidious, true Insidious, like I need to see every one. I've been there with the Marvel movies, I've been there with the Star Wars movies. I'm gonna see every one. If you're like that for Insidious, then go check this out. But besides that, man, whew, you can leave this one be, man. I didn't think this was a good movie at all, and I'll explain why as I transition to my overview on the movie. So, I will say there are a couple positives for this movie, starting it out. I'm not going to just be sitting here crapping all over it. I thought there was some interesting stuff, especially at the beginning of the movie. Now I was in row three of the theater, and my friends and I were supposed to see Teenage Sex and Murder at Camp Miasma, but we switched up and did an audible last second, and here we are, Insidious Out of the Further. This wasn't crazy, but I will say the opening scene I thought was really strong. I did like the opening scene. We see Gemma and her mother, like the sort of weird stuff that happens there. That's a draw you in, like what's going to happen here? This haunted house, this haunted person. What's going on here? That's interesting enough where like that grabs your attention. And it's like, okay, let's get into this. We can kind of dive into more of this jump scare sort of stuff. The mother's running around crazy, like she has possessed. This is interesting. And continuing that on, we fast forward to Gemma later, and she's a dental hygienist. Now, I haven't watched a lot of horror movies. Admittedly, this is my second true horror movie that I've watched in the past year or so. I mean, I probably watched, Coraline's the scariest movie I've ever watched. I'm not sure if that's ever going to change. But Gemma's now a dental hygienist, right? I thought this was another strong point of the movie. Who would have the idea to mix being a dentist, mixing that with horror? That was cool. Like to see all this stuff intersected. I thought that was one of the strong points of this movie as well, where that's sort of a different idea that we're flowing into, kind of different, catches you off guard. I'm not a like big anti-teeth person, but to see her like scrape the little junk off the teeth, like that's gross. So I thought that part was interesting. I wish they did another scene in the dentist. It was really only like one or two scenes in the dentist, but we got to spend most of this time at the house. So there's this character Elise as well, who I guess is like this legend of the series that didn't really do too much for me, just because I'm not an Insidious like truther. This is the first Insidious I've watched, one of the only first horror movies I've really watched. So like to see her pop up here as like a cameo. I know some people, while I was reading through some reviews on Letterboxd, like some people were excited to see her back. I thought she was a cool character. I think her signature line is like, "That's what I do." She kept saying that over and over. But I thought she was fine. I didn't think she was like standout or anything. I thought she was just there to move the plot along. Did a good job with that. Now, the down parts. The plot got so convoluted in the third act. It's really just hard to follow and understand what's happening. We have people who are couriers. We have the further. We have the normal life. We have people trying to bring people back from the further to the real life. We have visions. We have dreams. We have, the people are sleeping and they're actually in the other version because that's when you sleep, you go to the further. This shouldn't be all that complicated for like a pretty A to Z's horror movie. I thought that the plot was like, I was like, what is happening? This shouldn't be this confusing. And like, this is like a Christopher Nolan like mind bend like type of movie when it's like this is really could just be pretty straightforward. So I didn't like how convoluted the plot got at the end. The characters, I'm a big empath when it comes to movies. I like to relate to the characters, feel involved and interested in the character story. In this movie, I did not feel attached to any of the characters. Gemma was like an okay main character, but there's not really like a lot of character building. It's like she's thrown into the action. Yeah, she got fucked up when she was a kid by watching her mom commit suicide, but then she just becomes a mom, just a tweaker. And then like her kid, there wasn't a lot of like character building moments. There's like they throw out the toys, but there's nothing like. This movie actually is one of those. I feel like every movie I would come here saying a movie could have been shorter or longer, but this movie could have been a little bit longer, like a little more context building. I think building out the normal life of Gemma and Maya before they get involved in this sort of chaos horror scene, whatever, would have been more interesting because then it's like, okay, we're actually really rooting for Gemma to make it through this, where it's like, I didn't care who won it. I mean, obviously I want Maya the kid to live, and I want Gemma to make it out of the day, but we don't really care about Nick. We don't care about, we don't know much about Maya, or she's just like a little girl. We don't really know a ton about Gemma. So I thought that was another weak point of the movie. Is like none of these, I don't care what happens to any of these characters. So they didn't really have any depth. That's why I didn't like that part. There were a couple of different decent jump scares, but I think I've had a bad vision of horror movies growing up. Where I was like, I'm gonna go there and be petrified, like on the edge of my seat. If you ever listen to my Obsession review, the classic, I literally said to my friends, like, I might eject out of my seat tonight because what happened in Obsession. There were a couple decent, like, gotcha moments, but there was nothing that was, like, genuinely scary. Which I think, I don't know if that's unfair for me to, like, hold this movie to that flame of being like, you have to scare me, but if this is going to be, like, the horror, like, Insidious, one of these crazy franchises, let's do something, I feel like there was nothing there. There was a couple of decent, like, jump scares, but nothing too crazy, nothing that got me, like, holy fuck. It's not that they could have done a better job at that. I feel like they didn't really buy into too much of the like. They could have done more with the horror stuff and scary stuff, but whatever. And yeah, so I expected more from well renowned horror franchise. I was more scared personally by Obsession. I think that maybe that's my sort of horror movies, like the uneasiness in the background, where like there is uneasiness here. And another thing is I did like how they had like the people going on in the background and stuff. It's like, oh fuck. But I don't know. I think this movie was like just fell pretty flat for me. I don't know. We'll get into my thoughts and reactions now. I wouldn't like. It's just it's hard to explain, but like this just wasn't a good movie. So like I said, going into my thoughts and reactions, the opening scene was nutty with Gemma witnessing the downfall of her mom, where the mom comes in, is like, "Did you make dinner?" Where Gemma's like basically doing all the tasks around the house. Now that was a little weird of like what was happening to the mom, but we learned later on that this is like a hereditary disease, if you will, of like, oh, when you become a courier, you have to pass it, or you pass it on to your daughter. 3 generations, we see it now, but yeah, this downfall was crazy, and I think this is one of the standout scenes of the movie, with Gemma's mom going insane, running around, and then finally it culminates in the shower scene where she's banging her head in with the side. Well, we don't know who was with her at this time, but she's like, "Don't look away, don't come in this room," and she's like banging her head, and I think that could have been a little more gory. We could have seen a little more, but not even I hate gore, but I feel like they could have done a little more with that. But that was crazy. It started off moving 30 years in the future. I guess that's good to note that that's like time jump, whatever. But the dentist scene with Lester was crazy. So you have these three sort of acolytes who are involved in this movie working for Cyrus, who is the villain, and these three acolytes like follow. See, this is another confusing part. It's like they follow around Gemma so that when she goes to sleep, they know and are able to like attack her dreams. It's like, what sort of like paranormal shit's going on here? It's just so hard to keep track of. Like, they could have really done this down for the audience. I think it would have done a lot better. But one of her patients is this guy Lester, who is like doesn't talk at all. Where there are also a bunch of moments of me being annoyed with the main character, especially when her like boyfriend's like, "Yeah, just move out of the house." She's like, "It's not the house, trust me." And it's like clearly like the house is a part of it. And then like in the dentist scene, why when you have like a doctor on standby and she like ends up like knocking herself out, or he knocks her out through like scaring her. But where's like another nurse wouldn't come in and she just gets up and everything's normal. Like there was I feel like plot holes too that were happening throughout, but it's not even worth mentioning because like I know we're supposed to like abandon hope or not hope, but like abandon your sense of like realism as you're watching a movie like this. But yeah, the dentist scene I will say was pretty crazy. One of the scariest probably scenes is when we doing the teeth work on Lester. It's gross ass shit in his mouth. But then the second set of teeth come down and clamp onto her finger, she bashes her head into the light of the dentist room. So I thought that was a great scene. And then you have also the introduction to the further, where Elise is there to the rescue and is like, "This is what I do. I save people." So yeah, and she tells her to go to Claire. Claire is just like another plot piece. Like she just works in a tattoo shop and she's like an oracle or something where she can speak through the beyond and she can talk to uh, Gemma in the real world and Elise, and that she can embody the spirit of Elise. Whatever. Claire was just there, and she's kind of like the narrator for like the big ending scenes and whatever. So they find out through talking with Elise and the further that Gemma was a courier, which means she can bring items from the beyond or the further, which is a dumb name for it, but the further, she can bring items from the further into the real world. So that's her special ability that nobody else has. and I don't know why specifically Gemma was chosen. I guess it was hereditary because her mother had it as well. But this was just another confusing part of it that like it leads up to this big twist at the end of like, oh, when she brings the house into the further, she could have done the like she's using her powers for good, but it's like she's just a normal girl. Like, why does she get to have these powers? And it's like it just was stupid to like make a gotcha moment at the end. Whatever. I thought it was a little confusing. And she like brings back items like she gets stabbed with a pin. She brings back like part of a body at one point. It's like, what is going on here? I will say Cyrus was a decent villain. He's just like very scary in nature. He's got the blindfold over his eyes, like long hair. He's got that sort of creepy like red black color sense to him. That kind of aura around his character I thought was pretty scary. But he kind of just becomes a bitch as the movie moves along. But no, he's not. He doesn't become a bitch. He's a decent villain. And he's kind of like ominous, so you have that going for it. And I wanted to see them more dive into his cult. We see one video on the VHS tape of them doing like rituals and stuff like that, and obviously you have these acolytes who will follow him to the death. But I think like this movie could have benefited with some more runtime explaining the cult a little bit more. Why are they the ones who are alive in the beyond? How did he get that? Like, I don't know. Maybe not. But just some background on the cult I thought would have been better than just the one video clip they showed us. Yeah, that was an interesting aspect that I was interested in, but they didn't clearly care about that. So move ahead to the big plan to save the day at the end of the movie, which is just comical when you're listening to them explain it out. I had to hold myself from laughing a little bit when they're like, all right, so we're going to have Gemma sleep, and then when she's sleeping, Elise will be there in the further to help her walk through the red door, and we have to trap Cyrus in the red door, but then we get out of the red door, and, Nick's in the real world, and he's going to wake up the people who are going to be guarding the door. It's like, this is so stupid. Make this way less complicated. This movie doesn't have to be that freaking complicated, guys. But it's just so hard to understand what was going on at this point. And she runs into her mom again because she's now in her mom's memory, which I don't know how she got to her mom's memory. Was that where the red door was? It just is like, I feel like the movie was like, all right, we have point A, we're going to get to, and point B, we're going to finish at, and we're just going to like try and middle it out and see what happens and try and figure out a way to get there. It didn't really work in my opinion. So she sees her mom again, who she learns actually made the sacrifice for her. So when we saw the opening scene of her talking to Gemma in the shower, that was actually her fighting off Cyrus, but Cyrus is like invisible to the like naked eye of the real people. So Gemma didn't see her, and we're doing like Avengers level time jumps where the modern day Gemma slams the door, and that's seemingly why the door got slammed in the young Gemma's face at the time. So it's like we're time traveling, we're going in memories, we're going to different like this is genuinely like Avengers Endgame. This is literally his Avengers Endgame like plot. But yeah, so we find out Mom's made the sacrifice for her when she was a kid, and this was all a ploy because there's still one of the acolytes alive. Nick was doing fucking terrible at waking up the acolytes. There's still one alive, or still one around the daughter. So they go to the daughter, and of course this is a hereditary trait. So the daughter also has the ability to pass things through. And the whole point of them wanting to pass things through is because when they're able to pass in the dead people from the further into the real world. So they want to get their people into power, into real world views, and make them like the vision of Nick parking on the street and there's just a million of them in real world. I don't know what their plan. They were just going to wreck the world because they were angry about being dead. Like that was also weird to explain. Like what's their motivation for doing all this? I don't know. But yeah, so Mom made the sacrifice. She kind of hangs out with them for the end. And the big reveal, the big moment is when Gemma's able to bring the house that she is just being surrounded by dead people, which this is another thing where Elise is like, she'll be able to fight off the dead people, but they were seemingly like, had the upper hand on her. But I guess she just used this trick of like, oh, I'm bringing the house from the further to real, or from real world to the further and trapping them all in the further. And then it seems like no one actually bothered to open the door into the real world besides Cyrus. Well, I guess they were just in this house, but like when at least one person would walk outside and be like, hey, I'm in the real world, like y'all can have whatever you want, but we have to listen to Cyrus, whatever he says, because he says to bring Maya and Gemma to him. Just a villain being stupid of like wanting revenge over like, I guess Maya was like bringing the people in one by one, but they just wanted Gemma because whatever reason, and no one would bother to go outside. Whatever. So no one escapes into the real world, and it ends happily ever after with a house disappeared from the earth. And Cyrus is now in the further being pursued by all of his followers because they lied, or he lied to them about coming back. So they're all pissed at him. They all start tearing him apart. And I guess there's a mid-credit scene that I missed actually of Cyrus being treated at the dentist office by the people who were creepy in Gemma's dentist office. So yeah, overall this movie did not hit for me at all, to be honest. I think there's like a couple things that like bring this above like a really low score in my opinion. I think this was like kind of just really convoluted and a mess of a movie that, you know, tried to be something that it's not, and even what it's like the horror aspects were not there for me. So I'm gonna give this movie a 4.8. Just wasn't great in my opinion. I wouldn't recommend this movie to anybody. This was kind of just like a nothing burger in my opinion. There's not really a way for me to like describe how I felt about this movie. Like, there's no thoughts. That's good. There's no like talking this out with the boys or like giving a phone call to somebody being like, "Hey, I watched Insidious. What'd you think?" Like, I literally just said to people, "It's trash. You know, this is not a good movie." And I don't know if Insidious needs to get their shit together or I need to like be better at like accepting horror movies. But for me, this movie was a 4.8. It kind of just went off the rails at the first like literally two or three scenes. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking about an Insidious out of the further. But let me know down below in the comments what you guys think of Insidious. Am I crazy? Am I missing out? I'm sure there's some people, you know, I've been getting clowned a lot recently in my reviews, especially Blue Velvet. Please leave me alone on TikTok, guys. But let me know your thoughts on Insidious out of the further if you saw it. If you didn't see it, sorry for spoiling the entire movie, and it's worth it to not even go watch it. So be glad you watched this review. I just saved you about 2 hours of time. Where does this movie relate to the other movies reviewed so far on the channel? This is the 115th movie of 118 movies reviewed so far. So this is the fourth worst movie I've reviewed on the channel, and I stand by that 100%. This was a complete nothing burger. In terms of the genre of a supernatural horror, we have Obsession, which I gave an 8.5 to, and The Devil's Advocate, which I gave an 8.3 to. So now this becomes the new lowest supernatural horror on our channel that we've reviewed. And of our 2026 movies seen in theaters, this is the number 7 that I've seen. This is dead last, of course. So yeah, Send Help was the lowest before this, which I gave 7.3. This was a great year for movies until I started watching this slop. I should have gone to see teenage sex, and death at Camp Miasma, but whatever. Insidious, I got it out of the way. You know, I'm always open to trying new things, but this just wasn't for me personally. So that's where we'll leave off with Insidious out of the further. Coming up in the Dubcast, we'll have more movie reviews for you. Next one will be Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and then we will have Long Walk, and then we will have Insomnia, then we'll have Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, in terms of movie reviews, unless I go see something new. That always jumps the line for the reviews. But TV shows, we have Silo covering on a week-to-week basis, and then Survivor's coming back soon. I'll definitely be covering that. TBD, what else I'll be covering in terms of TV shows. Definitely going to try and do some short and long-term content for TV shows. And then sports, we'll be back for UFC 331 in the middle of September. But the big news now is NFL season is almost back, so it's going to be a couple weeks now, or a week or two, before I'm back with Mikey and Cam breaking down what we see from the NFL preseason. We may split that into two, an NFC and AFC, but we'll talk about that further down the line. So expect a live stream breaking down the preseason of the NFL. What are we like for the futures? How we predict each team's going to do. It'll be a fun time. So lots of stuff coming up on the Dubcast. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, dislike. You know, defend me on TikTok or argue with me. You know, I have a lot of people who are angry with me on TikTok at times when I make reviews about certain movies. So I'm curious to see, will the Insidious people be mad at me for this review? But I think if you have a like fair sense of everything and you look at this movie objectively, you're like, this was a dog shit movie. So that's where I'll leave y'all with this one. Appreciate you, and as always, peace, y'all.